It started when Chris Stone brought the information in. You know, he had a whole bag full of things that he'd found in his family's, the attic of his family home. And he didn't realize he was related to them. They were black. He, as far as he knew, was totally white. Mm-hmm. And he was curious, and he really wanted them to go to the right family. He thought it was a treasure, and the family should have it. So he brought it in to have us, try to find them. And Jim gave it to me. He gave me a few things to look at, just that he thought were really cool. And then he took off and left, and I'm going, well, he's gone. I'm just going to get online. And so I did. I got online there. Okay, and so the one that got me all excited was the article about the first Mary Watkins. She was Mary French at the time. See, there was a bank book in there. There was articles, about things that and it was difficult at first because there were two Mary Watkins. Okay. Because Mary, the first Mary's son, had married a Mary. Okay. So I wasn't sure at first. I got the two of them mixed up. Okay. But I managed to sort that out by online information from the LDS site. Okay. The Latter-day Saints have a really good genealogical website. It's my first go-to. Okay. And so, I mostly got it from those biographical files because the only picture that I can remember that actually had a name on it was Arrie's son, and Lewis Wright Jr. And he was playing the violin, and he was in some musical group. And it said underneath there, Lewis Wright Jr., my grandson. And so, I had figured out by then it was Arrie's stuff because looking through all of the yearbooks, it was all, it was Arrie that was in the yearbooks. Mm-hmm. She looked like she was quite athletic. She was on a couple of teams and ran track, and yeah.
These were yearbooks in the attic or yearbooks that you guys had here?
Yearbooks that were part of the what he had brought.
Oh, wow.
We do have them here too, but they were in there, so I knew they were, they belonged to whoever, the stuff was. Okay. But the more you looked at it, the more you could see it was very, even though it was the whole family, the stuff in there was very Arrie focused, if you want to put it that way. Okay. And so, the pictures of her. So, there was a whole group of little snapshots of the girls, Arrie and Ruth when they were younger, and I don't think any of them had names on them. Okay. So that's what we sent back to Sandra back in Texas. So she's part of the family. She's got family connections everywhere, and she's getting them out there digitized. We sent her a digital copy of everything. When I couldn't get any further, with trying to figure out, down the generations who to send, because that's, we wanted to find out as much information on the family as we could, but the prime thing was to find out who to send it to, because that's what Chris wanted. He wanted the family to have it. And so I just drew a blank, and I spoke to a friend of mine who is really, she's brilliant at genealogy. And she just got on and got back to me half an hour later, and there was Sandra. She was on Ancestry. And had the names on there. And so we've been talking back and forth, and she's very excited. We sent the box to her, and as I said, she's kind of, parceling it out. And as it turns out, Lewis, the only one who's identified, lives off the grid just up outside of Shasta. And I hope he's okay with the fires and everything.
Right, definitely.
He's in his 70s now, and but he didn't move too far.
We have Mary Molly Emma France, born in 1831 in Pennsylvania, and passed away in Eureka, and I think I don't know where it is. It doesn't say. I don't see the date here, but she passed away.
She died 3rd of May, 1935.
35.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
There it is, right there.
So yeah, I know that you were pretty fascinated with her story. What were some of the?
She's amazing. I guess every now and then, you do research for people, and I get some genealogical research when things are slow up here in the front office, and it's like you do it and it's over with. But every now and then you get somebody like her, and it's just like, ugh, it's just so fascinating. You just can't. Yeah. So I am definitely going to write an article about her for our publication.
The Humboldt Historian?
Humboldt Historian,
okay,
yes. It comes out quarterly, and I think it's going to be a great story. I just need to get some more information about it, but what? The first thing that I noticed about Molly is what she was called when she was younger. I call her Molly just to keep her separate from the other Mary in my head. So she was born free. And that was something that I thought was relatively interesting and unusual, because you go back that far, most people back at that time, if you were black, you probably were a slave. And she was born free. I haven't been able to get back any farther on her family. I'm going to have to hit my friend up again. Like I said, she's a wizard. So see what we can find out more stuff about her family, and but she was born in Philadelphia. She was born free, and she was very active with the abolitionist movement. So she lived with a Quaker family who actually went down into the South posing as slave owners. And Molly posed as a slave, which was, of course, was also for her own safety, because if they found out she wasn't, she would have been very quickly, I think. They'd have taken her, run away with her. But she would go down with this family, and while they were, visiting and doing the Southern charm thing, she would go down into the kitchens and out to the slave cabins and talk to them and get information about what was going on there, and then they would report back later on. And she did seem to be very active with the abolitionist movement. She talks about she had seen, now she doesn't say where she saw John Brown and where she saw Abraham Lincoln, but, oh no, it doesn't, I take that back. She said she was in Jefferson County, Virginia when John Brown was hanged. Mm-hmm. But just the things that she talks about, you can tell she was part of the abolitionist movement. Mm. So, yeah, it's she's got an exciting story. Mm. And then came, back to California. Let me think. It's not too long after the Civil War she came to San Francisco. That was a big trip back then. And she came with the Ridgway family, was the family that she was working for as a lady's maid. And they started a hotel in San Francisco, and she met her first husband, Leroy, in San Francisco, and they got married and came up here, and were the first black family in Humboldt County.
Okay. And Leroy was a blacksmith?
Yes.
And he owned a business in Eureka. Mm-hmm. So, these are like black people in Humboldt County, early 1900s.
Late 1800s. They were here by 1800s. The 1870s at the latest, I believe. I'd have to look and see. But, so I have Leroy. Yeah, a blacksmith shop at the corner of 13th and G Streets. Doesn't say when he came in. But he was in the California Great Register, so he was registered to vote in 1870. Is that what that says? Yeah, 1870. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So they were here in the, by the late 1860s probably. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is just interesting to me because, somebody that isn't from Humboldt County, mm-hmm. and, Humboldt County is... is a very, white place.
It is a very white place.
And so we don't really see, the history of, black families or, black business owners or black people that were in this community throughout.
Right.
Even if they were small or few in between, I think that history is very important. So that's why I'm very fascinating. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, late 1800s, there were black people out here in, in Humboldt County. So,
and they were the first. And that's another reason too. I want to do that article, is we have so little information about people of color in the history of this county.
Right.
Everybody knows about Charlie Moon, the Chinese guy who got to stay when they kicked all the Chinese, the rest of the Chinese out. But other than that, there isn't a whole lot, and then of course the indigenous peoples.
Right.
But as far as people of color who, came here later, there's very little information out there. Right. So I'm really excited about this for this reason too.
And did Mary Molly Watkins, did she have which one had the laundry business in there?
They both did, from what I could tell.
Okay.
After Leroy died, Molly did not remarry for quite some time. He died when the girls were, I'm trying to remember when he died. Should say here. Yeah. 1932. No, wait a minute. That's not right. That's the wrong one.
1877, Leroy?
You have it there? Yeah, so that was not too long. He was quite a bit older than her. He was born in 1804. She was, born in 1831.
Okay.
So he died in 1877, and she didn't remarry for quite a while. I think her children were grown, from what I can tell, by the time she finally married John Crouch. And in that time, she took care of herself. She had a house, and she had a pump house in the back, and she had her laundry business there. And then later on, her daughter-in-law, Mary, took it over, and also did laundry there.
Okay. Also, the Mary Watkins she was also listed as being one of the people in the Amity Club. Or maybe it was not her, not the first one, maybe the second.
It was the second Mary, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's significant because it's like, from the families that I am starting to see, it seems to be kind of like a somewhat close-knit group of like black people back in like the early 1950s, and so yeah, I just thought that was interesting when I was looking through the Amity
I thought
file.
it was too. I mean, honestly, I was kind of surprised when I saw that, to think that there were even enough black families in the area to have a club. I mean, I grew up in Ferndale, and of course Ferndale's special. But when I was growing up, I went to school with 3 black girls the whole time, the whole kindergarten through graduation. And that was because they came in with the Navy. The Navy housing, it's Coast Guard housing now, or it was, but they came in with the Navy, and those were the only black kids I ever grew up with, that I ever knew. And they didn't stay long, of course, because they were, being stationed in different places with their dads. But even coming into Eureka, I mean, I hardly remember ever seeing black people around. So I'm kind of surprised that there were even that many.
Right, me too, definitely.
It was kind of a shock coming back here, after I went into the military and spent 10 years living, no longer than that, 12 years, living on a military base where there's just everybody of every possible, ethnic background you could think of. And then to come back here, you're going, wow, it's still really, really white here. But if you look, I mean, it's really consistent with them throughout, that they were very well respected people. They were business people. They had, everybody knew them. They seemed to be well liked. I'm sure they were condescended to, and God knows how some people treated them. But overall, they came out here just like any other pioneers and made a life for themselves, and a good life. From what I could tell, they seemed to be happy, and had lots and lots of friends, and Molly lived to be, what was it, 103, 104, something like that. And yeah. And when you think about Leroy, her first husband, he was a slave. So to go from being owned to coming all the way out here into, which was the wilderness at the time, and, he built his own life here, even as an older man, and had his own business and was well respected for it. People might have been bigots, but they accepted the Watkins because they knew these people. They were good people and decent people, the kind of person you wanted to have for a neighbor. And respectable, I guess is the word. It was very important back then, respectability. And I think that it was probably a good lesson for a lot of people here who may never have been exposed to black people under other circumstances and just made assumptions like people do. Right. I think that's where a lot of bigotry comes from.
Right. Well, I guess it would be interesting to know how the guy who found the photos is related to, like, the Watkins.
I don't know that yet.
Okay.
But she sent me a thing, and it just said, I'm really busy tonight, but just real quick to let you know, Chris is related to us. And I'm going, you're kidding. Well, he's got one side of his family that he knows about. They're all Norwegian. He knows they came from Norway. The other side of his family he knew nothing about. And according to Sandra, her family is, how did she put it, very, very diverse. She said there are people in her family that look white. There are people who look black, and everywhere in between. And so I guess Chris is just from the white-looking side. But she said she had an aunt that she's been talking to, who's in her 90s. And she said her aunt told her that she didn't realize for years that when she was a kid, they used to go visit these white people, and she had no idea they were family. And but they were. Just passing as white.
Okay.
So I would be really intrigued to see the whole family tree.